good. So, okay, awesome. Welcome, guys, to the Pig Daily, episode number 61. It is today a very special episode. We're going to do What If Wednesdays, but I couldn't find a great pairing of players, and I actually have an even better idea for today's show. So we've got TLO on the call with me right now, and he's going to be talking us through some of his games from the finals of the Corsair Cup, which he won yesterday or the day before, and he used some really cool Burrowed Banelings in ZvT against Alive. So we're basically just going to look through the replays together. I'm going to ask Dario a bunch of questions, and we're going to analyze away and have some fun. So how you going, Dario?
Hey, yeah, I'm doing well. You just woke up, I suppose. Living in a crazy time zone for me. It's about to be bedtime, but I think this is going to be fun.
It should be good, man. It's always nice because, like, when you're a pro and you're kind of proud of a tournament and you kind of watch the replay, but like you're not really looking to learn anything necessarily, and it's a sort of guilty pleasure. In this case, not only do you get to watch it, but you get to actually then talk about how awesome you are with me also giving you accolades. So this should be a special experience.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I love talking about myself.
All right, so this is Gettysburg. I mean, while we're just looking at the early game here, thoughts on this map in general? Do you feel like it's pretty good for Zerg because it's so long, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's pretty much the best map for Zerg against Terran. It's a little bit strange that he didn't veto it, because like Gettysburg, most of the pro Zergs kind of consider it free win for Zerg. And then Frozen and Galactic are like the really strong Terran maps.
Yep. So
and their sensation is really strange. It's also good for Terran, but there's some weird all-ins. But yeah, this one is very good for Zerg.
That's interesting that Galactic started to take that sort of view, because I know a lot of the Terrans who aren't on the highest end of the spectrum, but kind of like your top GM, your lower end pro gamers, they really struggle on Galactic because it's hard to do the early pressure and do direct damage into 3-base. But the real strength on that map, I guess, is all the cliffs, right? Like once it gets to the mid game, taking engagements, like there's too many drop angles and too many areas where Widow Mines and tanks can get value, right?
Yeah, it's just the general layout of the map is good for Terran, and then there's also always Reapers. The Reapers are just, it's like Frozen.
Yep.
2-Rex Reaper or 3-Rex Reaper is so incredibly strong. And you can just die to that, and you always need to be scared of that. And then, yeah, it's also not that easy against just longer games.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, awesome. So Gettys, I mean, it's very hard for Terran to push, of course, because the bridge, very narrow, you can't really get across there, and then it just takes so long to get across that top of the map, and it's all wide open spaces where Ling Bane and Ultras are going to have a party on top of a Terran army. There's no choke points, no cliffs for the Widow Mines to abuse, where the Zerg units kind of all clump up around them.
So yeah, the two top lanes are so wide as well that you can always counterattack. Like on some maps, when Terran pushes, like on Frozen, it's not that easy to counterattack because there's relatively narrow paths. But here, there's just always a way to get a lot of units around.
Now, something very interesting you did this game is you've opened up with 100 gas for Zergling speed, but then you've just gone for a 2-minute 30, like 27, 28 supply third base, and you've delayed Zergling speed starting. So is this a specific reaction, something you planned?
This is pretty much my standard ZvT build, actually. It's a little bit funky. Basically, you only need speed for 2 reasons. To secure your third against the Reaper, I circumvent that because I can just make my hatch before the Reaper is there because I skip making speed. Or if you're being 3-rexed or 4-rexed or any kind of proxy rex, So I just mine the gas just in case, if it's like an all-in. So I definitely want to have it, because if I just don't do it, people are going to start abusing me, and I'm just going to die to all-ins. So I just mine it, and then I just make it after my third queen and the Overlord after that. Because then it finishes around the time Hellions would be in your base. Basically, the Hellions arrive if they go Hellions, and then it seems like you don't have speed, and then speed finishes right at the correct moment. So it's almost like a bait as well.
That's actually sick. And I mean, in terms of efficiency, someone could say, well, why don't you just mine the gas later? But it's because you've already got 16 drones on minerals in this early stage, right? So you might as well get the gas, put the extra guys onto the gas, and start mining that.
Yeah.
So what about here at this point? Did you ever think of maybe rather than putting 3 guys on gas straight away, just rally them on and get slightly more minerals here, since you're not going to use the gas straight away anyway?
I used to do that, but it didn't really make a difference, and it has two disadvantages. First of all, if it's an all-in, I mean, that's the reason
Yeah.
why I want to have the 100 grass. If it's an all-in, I want to be able to start the speed immediately when the pool finishes. And also, the Reaper comes in at a time where I have a bunch of stuff to do. I need to start my third base. I need to make sure I don't lose drones in the natural. And I found it just easier to already rally my drones to my natural earlier, rather than having to do that while I have to deal with the Reaper. So maybe it's not the 100% efficient thing to do, but it's a little bit safer, and then I don't have to multitask at the time where it's dangerous.
Yeah, that's actually really smart, though. I mean, I agree. That's like a point where it's very easy to lose 2 or 3 Zerglings, which you really shouldn't be losing to the Reaper, because you've got to do this intense micro, right? Right now, you're dropping your third base. You've got to pull back the weak Zerglings. You've got to kind of stay on creep, not chase him. Yeah, pull that red Zergling to the back. Make sure you start your third queen.
Finish.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you got to start the Overlord as well, right? You get supply blocked on 36. Things can just get really crap with your opening.
Yeah. Like, it's usually not worth it to like gain 10 minerals, but create another like area where you can make a mistake. It's just as simple as that. Like, perfect play sounds like theoretically like a good thing, but absolutely perfect play that requires you to not make any mistakes is actually not the way to play StarCraft. Like, nobody's on that level, basically. Even the best Koreans in the world make basic mistakes still, so there's no reason to overcomplicate it for yourselves.
I absolutely agree. So part of the skill is figuring out what your own limits are there and playing the game to those limits. And that's part of where you see different players' style as well, right? Like, you'll see certain Korean players who aren't the mechanical gods, and they do play these kind of weirder styles usually, or cleverer builds and that sort of stuff. But another point I did want to ask you about here, creep tumor before inject on the natural. Now, I'm guessing because you've grabbed the third so fast, you're actually going to be getting a few extra lava from that super fast third base anyway, and you wouldn't be able to spend that inject straight away. So if I guess if we watch your lava count and also your mineral count here, we're going to see that you're not really going to have any point where you don't have enough lava.
Yeah, I think that's pretty alright in my experience. And you also start a third queen, and I want to go up to 5 queens relatively quickly. So yeah, if you look at the lava and the money, it's not so bad.
And your creep gets out so fast as well.
Yeah, and on Gettysburg is extra nice, because if they do play Hellions and I have creep at the bridge, I can just put down an Evo, and then that's completely dealt with.
Anyway. Oh, really? Can a single Evo actually block that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it actually lines up properly. That's cool. Okay, that's awesome. Does it fully
also
block
nice
it, or does
No, it's just a perfect fit, yeah. You can just put it in.
That's awesome. Right, because I guess those little hedges jut out. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. All right. And you've done that against Adepts as well?
Yeah, against Adepts it's much better, because Hellions are not that common, but against Adepts it can be really, really great.
Okay, sick. So, with your opening from here, it looks pretty standard fare, double upgrades, Baneling Nest, how many queens? Only 5 queens. So I notice you're the kind of guy who likes to have the fast Baneling Nest to deal with like Hellbat pressures and that sort of stuff, right? Whereas a lot of players go for like 7, 8 queens. And this also gives you the potential to do a very sharp counter attack, right? So if you sense weakness, you can go bust them, I guess?
Yeah, and it's just security. Like, I've died a couple of times to stupid Hellbat stuff, where you always feel a little bit bad after, because Hellbat pushes are not really good. So, like, you should always be able to defend it, right? If you have a Baneling Nest, you just hold it, and then you're super far ahead. And then I always felt stupid if I lost to it. And I think 5 queens are fine. Like, if you look at my tumor count, I don't really need more queens right now. I'm doing fine in that regard. So I'd rather have more fighting power.
That's actually a really good point, because I mean the queens really are there just as like a general all-purpose defensive unit. Like, yeah, they're good at anti-air, they're decent at fighting ground, but mainly their job is tanking. They don't really shut things down quickly. And like you said, creep tumors are actually not that important to have in huge numbers. Like, when you see people with like 6 creep tumors on one little narrow path, it's actually just like a waste of APM. Like, you don't need to have that many creep tumors, because even having 1 or 2 creep tumors spread it pretty much at the maximum possible speed. So putting more creep tumors there is just a waste of energy. So even if you do go 7 or 8 queens, you should only have probably at most as many creep tumors as you have right now, and the rest should be saved up for injects and then dumping, for transfuse, and then dumping injects on macro hatches, like once your 4th base and your macro hatch comes up, and then you can, kind of have that mid-game lava boom to keep your Ling Bane production up.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an artifact of older creep spread that was slower when people massed tumors. More tumors are a little bit nice because they are harder to kill. But mostly, as long as you can spread your tumors out in every direction you have, you don't need more tumors than that, basically.
Exactly. Awesome. So talk us through this point in the game. Like, you get a 4th pretty early. In terms of your gases, you kind of saturated all your bases pretty much and then grabbed all your gases around the same time. You got a very fast burrow as well. I guess let's talk about burrow first of all. Obviously, I've titled the thing Dr. Dario's Bane-Mine ZvT, today's show, but besides that, do you ever use like Zergling scouts? I mean, I guess you're going to burrow underneath 4th bases with Zerglings as well. How early do you think it's important for you to get burrow?
I mean, I think you can just get it relative, like basically it's, I would call it a luxury research. So I would never cut drones or like important researches like +2 or Baneling speed. I would never cut these things if I need them for burrow, but if you can afford it, it's a relatively cheap investment for huge potential. Basically, if you force Terran to scan 1 time or 2 times, it's already paid back easily, right? So
Exactly.
and now he has to scan all the time. Whenever he's moving, he has to scan, because if not, he can just lose his entire army. Then yeah, you can also put. I mean, the main reason I got it fast on this map was because I saw a relatively fast tank, and I was afraid because it was on European server and very late for life. I was kind of expecting him to be kind of cheesy, so I'd put these Banelings on the bridge because I expected the big marine tank push, and then it just turned out to be a relatively normal game. Like, these fast tanks are very unusual in European style CVT at the moment, so I expected something a little bit strange.
And then you just got burrowed Zerglings everywhere. So what do you think of like map hack Zerglings, like say on his push path, like putting a Zergling, I don't know if my signal is working. Can you see my ping? I don't think we can see each other's pings.
No, I can't do ping, but I can't see it. But yeah, just put it in the main paths of like where the army. Yeah, that's good. Definitely good. I could have done that here.
You've got one just up, kind of towards his like 4th and 5th base location. You've got like 2 Zerglings there, so they can kind of provide you vision. And if you can move those down at a later date, it gives you a bit more info. Of course, you've got so much map control; it's not really important right now. But I noticed you've skipped Spire this game, right? So you're just kind of saying, just go straight up to Ultras. This is a later style, adding a couple Infestors in. Do you feel like there's any risks with this style? I mean, I noticed you got a few Ravagers. Are they there specifically for Widow Mines? That's like a really cute addition. Talk us through this mid-game.
Well, I mean, I think Ling Baneling is very solid. I don't think you need to Spire until very late in CVT. And Ravagers are just always good, you know? He could have Liberators, and then if you don't have Ravagers ready, it can be a little bit nasty. It also just makes poking a lot harder. Terran always likes to push forward with like small vanguards of units to clear creep and to just kind of slowly gain control over the space in front of you. But if you have a few ranged units, like let's say 5 Ravagers, suddenly you can't do those mini pokes anymore to kill creep tumors, to snipe Banelings, to annoy Infestors. So Ravagers, they just make everything a lot more convenient for Zerg.
That's really cool, right? Because Queens don't achieve the same thing because they just don't have the same damage output. So with Medevacs there, they just don't really punish, 10 Marines and a Marauder stimming forward and poking away at your army. That's really interesting because I've seen it being, quite a bit more common on Korea as well. Where quite a few players have actually started doing that, having the Ravagers just mixed in their Ling Bane army. And it's so awkward to just push back the creep, whereas against Ling Bane, you can kind of steadily shove your way forward a lot quicker. So that was really cool, but because there was no Mines and Liberators, you left it at just a single Ravager and Roach. So you were kind of like, not more, you know, basically you're only going to commit to a lot of those Ravagers if you see a lot of Widow Mines or Liberators, those units that you can actually snipe off, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and here I was just he was so far away to threaten me. I mean, the roaches I should have turned into Ravagers. I was a little bit sloppy, but I was just kind of focused on the macroing and pulling him back until my ultra's out.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got ultras on the way, it's like kind of unimportant comparatively to be focusing on morphing roaches into Ravagers. It's like, well, if you've got enough room, you can kind of skip that part of the game. And just go straight up to these ultras, right? And then once you got to these ultras, we see super heavy Marine army, no Liberators out yet, and you just kind of roll over the top here. But I do want to go back just after we watched the end of this game, where it was just, this was kind of like a textbook defensive game. Your Burrowed Banelings never had a massive hit. This wasn't like a dramatic Burrowed Baneling game, but it did a lot. And so did the Burrowed Zerglings as well, in terms of putting on a lot of pressure and making it really awkward for him to actually push across. So let's watch the end of this. Just relentless. There we go. So return to game. Don't let that finish. There was that moment with that Zergling run by, which I really liked. And I really liked just getting this utility out of Burrow, where you were running these Zerglings around behind, and he was running you down. You couldn't find any damage. So you basically just started burrowing the Zerglings everywhere. So it's this Zergling counterattack that you send along the top of the map. And he actually catches it, unfortunately. Whoa, I'm getting some big lags. All right, let me slow that down. Apparently my computer can't handle the 8 times speed. So these Zerglings are getting cornered. And, I mean, you're just trying to waste as many scans as possible, right? Like, you're buying a lot of time here for what is really like 30 Zerglings. It's not really that big an investment, right? And the thing is, if he doesn't scan every single one, I guess you can just pop up later, you can run into those mineral lines and start to do massive damage. So this is one of those really obnoxious moves, which, I mean, this is just the way to play it, right? You want to abuse Terran's weakness. There's no detection, unless he wants to go build turrets there, which he's skipped out on because you haven't built any muters. You know, he's going to leave those Zerglings. And do these Zerglings actually unburrow? I wasn't paying attention. Let's...
Yeah, I think just to buy some more time, just be annoying.
And that's sick. That's such a big distraction. And it's right as you engage at the front as well. So check that out.
Yeah, basically my engage in the front was triggered by the links. Like, I knew he's distracted right now. StarCraft 2 is a lot about attention. A lot of times when you want to harass, you want to distract the opponent at the same time, right? Let's say you morph for Banelings next to somebody, next to their base, and if you just roll them in without doing anything else, they are most likely just going to be deterred and do no damage. But if you take your entire army and just like move it threateningly towards their army, they're probably going to look there more likely than at their mineral lines. So StarCraft 2 is a lot about playing with the attention of your opponent.
Especially in this matchup, and we just watched that. I had it on a lives camera during that whole thing while you were speaking, and we could see him move up with his army. He's like about to push onto creep, and then he pulls back and he's like, oh crap, my units are stuck behind my wall, I'm losing SCVs. And he looks back at his army and pulls it back, and then he looks back down there, and then, you know, it kind of had the opportunity, like if you had a few more corrosive vials, you would have got 3 or 4 medevacs and his tanks at the start of that engage. And then even in the follow-up, he's still looking around all over the place. His army's split up trying to catch those Zerglings, and then you pounce there. You catch half of his army exposed, and you can see this from the Terran perspective, just how irritating it is if you consciously tear apart their attention. So, really well played. So that's really cool. I like the twist on your opening here. I think this was a pretty good game, but I think we got all the points out of that. So let's go take a look at that second game. GG's.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Gettysburg makes it a lot easier. Especially my style is extremely abusive for the map because your economy is even faster. So it feels almost unfair, to be honest, Gettysburg. But I mean, it's his fault for not vetoing it.
It's actually so cool. I love that skipping the Zergling speed, because like I always love the fast third kind of before the Reaper gets there, or as the Reaper gets there, you know, I hide the drone a few seconds earlier. And I saw Scarlet started to do it as well. And I feel like it's just got that power on these defensive maps, especially if the Terran's just going like 2-1-1, or in that case he did, I think he did like straight into tanks, right? He did like a really kind of soft poking opening. You're in this game as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, sometimes I'm like reading Twitch chat and I'm like, did I actually get you in this lobby? Awesome. All right, so Frost. Now this is kind of a tough one if it's not cross map. Most Zergs like feel really uncomfortable here. Talk us through Frost, man.
Yeah, Frost is always feels awkward once you reach the latest it becomes really strange is when you want to have 5 bases, because sometimes you can justify just taking the 4 normal like square bases, even if you're like close. Let's say if you have good creep spread, you can even take the base close to Terran. But once you want to have that base and then one of the 4 bases, because it's not easy to get creep over there, and then it's so easy to lose a base like that to a drop or something. I think it's a very just mechanically demanding map. And it's definitely the #1 map where you lose games if you use the all army key, because you need to have your armies in different locations.
This is not Guru's spawn location, then, I guess.
No, no, no.
Did you watch Dark in the cross finals against Beyond on this map? You did, right?
Yeah.
That was interesting. Now, I can't quite remember, but I remember that it was these same spawns, just the players were reversed. And even though he was playing Ling Bane, Dark tried to hold on to the lower base with the high ground above it and this narrow area. Basically, a whole bunch of areas which Terran love to abuse. They want to fight your Ling Bane around these choke points, right?
Yeah.
Oh, what did I just press? Whoops. There we go. And he actually managed to hang on to it. I can't remember if he took that out of desperation after his north 4th base kind of got cancelled. But I feel like it's almost suicidal taking that base. Like somehow Dark managed to win that game. He managed to like hold on to this sort of bridge area with Queen Ling Bane for like a 10-minute battle against Beyond. But I felt like, man, it just seems kind of crazy. Like I definitely think with Ling Bane, I prefer the further away 4th, even though, like you said, it's very mechanically demanding and you need to catch their drops. Like, do you think Dark's just a little bit crazy or what?
I don't remember exactly anymore how his creep spread situation looked like. I usually take that close base if I mess up my creep spread towards the other base, because if you don't have creep connecting, it's an even more dangerous base than the other.
Yeah.
Almost.
I guess
But
especially.
I agree.
Would you prioritize creep towards the watchtower, like in front of that base, or creep around the back path towards that base to connect it? Because I kind of feel like if you can hold your watchtower and kind of engage out in this big middle open area, it becomes a lot easier to defend. But are you more focused just on the reinforcing creep around the back?
The back creep is where you should, like, let's put it that way. You should prioritize the front creep, because it also helps you just stay alive against pushes in general. And if you control the front, you have a much easier time controlling the north when you're from the south. But there's always the backup creep through the back, right?
Yeah.
Basically, it's almost impossible for Terran to deny that creep. So you can maybe forget tumors here and there, but you should keep spreading creep there, because it's basically free creep towards your base to make it a little bit safer. But yeah, the front creep is more important. The back creep is safer.
Okay, awesome. So this game, we're going to get to see you versus the 2-1-1, the build which everyone's doing. The build which very few people can execute, like Beyond. And Alive here is one of the few guys who can execute it incredibly well and has been doing for a long time this year. So in this position, you're up against the 2-on-1. Have you recognized it yet in terms of your scouting? You did poke in earlier. So
I think my overlords just saw a second, like, if I look at my vision, I see one building, and I think that's the second barracks I scouted really early.
Yeah.
And that basically tells you everything.
I
know, maybe that was
it was
oh,
the
maybe
factory,
I saw the
actually.
factory. I think the timing of the factory gave it away. Because if you would go normal factory, that would be a little bit faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I saw. And then I was like, okay, this is the timing of 2-on-1.
Yeah. Factory into gas after, but it's delayed. So, okay, cool. So what are your thoughts? How do you prepare for that? Do you have any specific timings in mind when you're up against 2-on-1?
It's like, you want to be ready around 5 minutes. And before that, you want to just drone. Like, I like to drone a lot until like 4:20. It depends a little bit on the map. For example, in Gettysburg, you have a lot of leeway. On Frost Horizontal, it's a little bit more scary, but yeah. Around 4:20, I start making a lot of units and start preparing.
Okay, cool. Because normally, I mean, 5 minutes 20 is like the timing they actually will be in your third base or at your front with the 16 Marines fully unloaded and stimmed, right? So, yeah, you always want to be a bit over-prepared against this push, right? Like, I feel like we see a lot of players trying to really under-prepare against it, and trying to go for other things which aren't that important, like Overlord speed and all these different things. And the thing is, it's a very easy to scout build. Even if you don't get an Overlord in the main, say there were Marines on the edge, you can easily just run Zerglings in the front. You see a lot of Marines at the front, it's this build, right? Like, every single time, you can just see a lot of Marines, and it's like, yeah, it's cool. So it's very easy to recognize it. But if you're like, oh, I've got 3 queens at the front, I've got 20 Zerglings, like that's not going to stop 16 stim Marines. They're just going to chew through you, right? So do you ever have any sort of unit number you like? Do you like to pull like 4 or 5 queens to the front, like 40 Zerglings? At what sort of point do you kind of stop and feel comfortable? Do you like Banelings with it as well, or just Zergling queen?
Banelings are a little bit... I have a mixed feelings about Banelings. Banelings kind of suck against the first 2 medivacs, because there they usually kind of stay off your creep and just want to kill creep, and slow Banelings are just easily sniped before you have really big numbers of Lings and Banes. So for the first push, just only Lings usually, and then, but if they go for 4 medivacs, really quickly you want to kind of have Banelings. And yeah, I usually go for around 40 Lings. Alright. And this is ideal in this game because I get under his medivacs, and then you're obviously in a really good spot. But you definitely don't want to undermake Lings.
That's something you should always kind of be aware of as well, right? Like I saw Rogue, even though Rogue looked pretty uninspiring in all of his EVP and his ZvT the other day, one thing which he was really good at was always making sure he was underneath those first 2 medivacs. And it does allow you to be a bit greedier as well. Like if you've maybe prepared slightly late, or you've realized what's happening slightly late, if you can delay that first unload, force them to pick up and move off, it makes a really big difference. So having a few Zerglings out to spot can be good for you. You just had fantastic creep, and your Zerglings were in a super central location, so you were always going to be ready to be in the right position. And once you defend that, I mean, personally, my feeling, I mean, 2-1-1's pretty much my only build against Zerg as well when I'm playing Terran at the moment. Obviously, I play at a pretty pleb level, but it's something where I feel like if Terran loses the first units, it's very bad for Terran. So even if you lose a couple queens, if you can like snap, especially both of the first 2 medevacs, that's fantastic. And I mean, the main reason is creep spread, right? Like you just have real comfort to drone and spread creep, right?
Yeah, if you stop the first drop, and even if you only kill like 6 of those Marines, it loses so much power. Suddenly, Zerg is basically not threatened at all anymore, and I can just throw and get all the tech up I want. You really want to keep every single Marine alive, basically, as long as possible, and it's much better to kill creep and be on the edges and like pick off Zerglings, because every time I engage on the Marines, I will lose Zerglings. It's just ranged units.
Yep.
I kind of like Swarmos. They're free units. They just shoot your melee units before you can do anything. And it's much better to get small gains as Terran there than, like, let's say if you kill 6 drones, or 8 drones even, but lose both Medivacs and the Marines, I'm much more happy about it than if you kill like 30 Lings over a long period of time and kill creep and keep building up your big ball of Marines, because ranged units become more efficient the more there are of them, obviously, because you just kill more stuff before it even engages with you.
So yeah, it can just get more and more out of control, right? And that threat as well, it comes back to attention, right? We were talking in that Gettysburg game about how during that phase where if you can pull him away with a counterattack and then engage on the front, like you can just kind of roll over, because for both sides it's quite micro intensive. So likewise, as the Zerg player, you're always a little bit paranoid about that drop getting wedged in behind your minerals when you're not looking, right? Or him just stimming forward when your Lings aren't there, sniping off 3 creep queens and running away. So it kind of puts you on edge, and it takes a bit of attention away from your injects and your creep spread, right? Like if he's still on the edge of creep, not only is he directly stopping creep, but usually he's going to force your attention away from those macro tasks, so you're just not going to be as crisp as you otherwise would be.
Yeah. It's always a great feeling in StarCraft to be in control. If you're the person who's controlling the game right now, you make it's basically, you don't want to have to follow your opponent. Because if you follow, there's always a reaction time to it. He does something, I need to think about it, or like process what's happening, and then I need to make my step. But if you're the one dictating, you just keep making steps, right? You don't even think about it. You're just doing whatever the hell you want to do. And it's a lot less mentally taxing to be the active player than the reacting player.
Exactly. You get that rhythm A lot of StarCraft's about interrupting their rhythm, and I've got it on your camera here because we get to see that rhythm in full bloom. You're just spreading creep beautifully. There's so little downtime on it. You're calmly adding your upgrades. You're reorganizing your drones. Oh, I just saw as well, you're doing the sickest little creep trick. You're actually going to drop creep with this Overlord, aren't you? And drop the creep across the gap. That's actually sick, man. Oh, I think you weren't close enough, right?
I was not. This location is a bit more tricky. You need to be right at the edge, but first you need to make tumors so you can get to the edge. But yeah, it's really good on Frost. I love doing this because a lot of times it just really makes a difference. I can much easier start spreading creep over there than already.
That's sick. You know, yeah, that's so big, especially with Ling Bane styles. Creep's so important. I remember it's something. This has just reminded me. Something I used to always be really big on was always drop creep at that 4th base location and towards your 4th. Like every game, even before I dropped my 4th hatchery, I'd always have 1 or 2 overlords pre-planned. So the moment my lair finishes, I could drop creep and spread tumors up there. And this is something because I was playing roaches for so long, I've actually completely forgotten it. And just seeing you do that tricky move has just kind of reminded me. I'm like, oh man, this actually makes such a big difference. And I've been completely forgetting to do this. So you've just inspired me to remember to always be using those overlords and doing those beautiful little creep tricks because they make such a big difference.
Yeah, it's just basically free stuff to do. That's a cool thing about Zerg. The faster you are, the more mechanics you have, the more just free stuff you get. Like tumors are just free stuff basically, and the better you are at tumors, the more stuff you get.
I did used to joke sometimes that, you know, half of Zerg players are the guys who just want to click on things really fast and not really think about what they're doing. Of course, that's it's an oversimplification, but it's kind of true, right? Like StarCraft, you can always get more value out of it, especially with Zerg macro. But I mean, you were all over it.
You just want to play Osu. You just want to play Osu. You just want to click on stuff fast.
While listening to some anime tracks, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're all over him. You're in complete control here. I do notice that you committed to a really big timing attack here. Do you just feel like you had a bit of an edge? I noticed you're not really going for Hive behind this, and you're actually only on 5 gases. So was this something you kind of pre-planned because it's these spawning locations and it's more aggressive? What are your thoughts on doing that big attack?
Yeah, I just felt like I was really far ahead, and then I must admit this was also, oh well, he has Korean lag. You know, I'm just gonna roll over him and he can't properly split against me, you know. That's definitely a factor, and I don't feel any shame for using that. And Snoot has been telling me that he's enjoyed like a 5 gas Baneling style a lot lately, so I was just giving it a try myself. But I felt in this game it was probably a little bit of a mistake, and on Frost it's scary because if you mess up one attack, they can just kind of kill you. But it worked out for me okay here.
I mean, my thoughts as well on why it's good are twofold. On top of what you said, it gives you space to put these burrowed Banelings really forward aggressively, which is awesome. And that gives you also more room to spread creep super far, right? So even though at the end of it, it's like, oh, those engages didn't quite get done what you wanted it to get done. He's got an army supply lead now. It's like, oh, but you've created space, you've done that. And also, it's something where you want to kind of overcommit to units sometimes as a strategy. If you ever feel like you're behind on a map from the get-go, like, oh, it's just going to be so hard to defend his push, well, it's a strategy game. Overcommit to defending that push, right? So if you're worried about constantly getting shoved back in these side spawns where the rush distance is really short, why not overcommit to the units? And then the moment he pushes out on the map, you can kind of wrap around his army and kill him. I mean, in this particular scenario, you said, well, I'm not sure how long it's going to be till he's going to push. I'd rather take the fight now because I think I've got a strong point. But you very easily could have waited just out of sight, out of vision, and the moment he pushes out to the watchtower, kind of wrapped around him. And that might have worked really well as well, right?
Yeah, I think it's maybe we can question if the attack was really the best thing to do, but I think what I did as a follow-up was the correct thing. Like, keep pushing the creep, make Banelings, and then drone behind it to finally get my ultra strong tech up. Yeah.
And you add a 6th and 7th gases. Now, a lot of players just kind of take all their gas all the time, but the whole, I guess, meaning of skipping out on those gases in these styles is you do get more Zerglings. And if you ever have an overwhelming number of Zerglings and there isn't quite enough Terran, you can kind of just wrap around and kill everything. You lock everything down, so even a relatively small number of Banelings will make contact. They'll get those money hits. Yeah. And you can always then add the gases behind it. The thing is, sometimes you don't even need to. And sometimes you've got enough gas to make the ultras, even off just 4 or 5 gases all game, simply because you've been spending so much less money on banelings throughout. Whereas if you're in those game battles where your army is like 80% banelings, you're never going to take an efficient fight. Like every fight is going to be horrible efficiency-wise for you, right? Because banelings are just never cost efficient unless you get those money hits.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And people are notoriously bad about over-gassing. In this game, especially Terrans are guilty of that. You can listen to Snoot going on tirades about that, basically. Like, Alive has like 1k gas this entire game for no reason. So take your SCVs out of gas when that happens. And same goes for Zerg. Like, a lot of people go up to 8 gas for no reason, basically. And then as soon as you have more gas than minerals, Zerg is almost always bad, because other than Vipers, there's not this End Infestors, but they don't even have an amazing ratio. There's no units that need more gas than minerals.
Yeah.
So you never want to have more gas than minerals, unless you're basically banking for a Muta switch or something crazy like that.
I have to agree with that. And here you're just biding time for chitinous plating, right? Just going to wait for that upgrade and then roll over the top, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, you never want to fight before that, basically. 3-3 is also almost done. Carapace, no reason to fight before.
Oh,
and I'm just happy seeing him set up slowly.
But I know a Zerg player, man. Chitinous plating finishes, it doesn't matter if 3-3 is 10 seconds from finishing. You're going to go. Like, it actually just makes perfect sense, because you know you're maxed out there, or almost maxed out. He's quite far away from it. You know you've got a good angle. His army was entirely on creep as well. So there's like that window where you've got this like 20-second moment, or sometimes depending on how deep they are in creep, where you can just wait, but you don't want to wait until the creep completely recedes. As long as their whole army's on creep, your army, I would say, is like 20-30% more effective. Like, it's awesome. And that makes a really huge difference. So you just kind of bide your time, wait for the important upgrade, and it's so scary for him to push any deeper, but even as it is.
Yeah. One thing I want to point out in that fight as well, because I think that's something that is also not done enough. If you just look at the tanks and my queens, I think that's really important as Zerg. Just always send in your queens first. If you're allowed to fight on creep, just send in your queens first, because tanks will shoot them. And it's not that easy for Terran, because they have a lot of micro to do, to actually change targets on them.
Yeah, and those tanks actually, the entire fight, are still blasting those queens. You dropped 1 or 2 transfuses on it because, let's face it, you're Zerg. All you need to do is A move. Your units are obviously, like, your units are pre-spread. Like, you've done all the micro beforehand. You've done all the mechanics beforehand. All you need to do is drop fungals and drop some transfuses, and you actually absorbed massive, massive tank shots on those queens. And the Ling Bane just went in there and killed everything.
Yeah, I like to call them the poor man's immortals, basically.
A fitting term. They don't dish out the same hurt, but otherwise they do an okay job. So,
but they have even more hit points if you use all the transfuses.
Also, they're basically a mobile SAM site, right? Like they just shoot anything out of the sky, man. I always love that. Like, every single time in a big tournament recently, when a queen shoots something and like the unit's flown, so like the projectile follows it that extra distance. Yeah. I just love the sound every commentator makes in that moment. There's always this like kind of groan of horror. And then someone always mentions queen range as if that was the deciding factor in the person leaving their medevac in the base too long. But nonetheless, let's hop out and into that last game, Frozen Temple, where there were some beautiful, beautiful burrowed banelings in that game.
Sure. Yeah, especially when a queen shoots a boosted medevac. It's like the projectile flies like 17 range or something. It's Tempest range, but I get that. It can be a bit horrifying.
Compared to the days before it, though, it's interesting. I'm still kind of torn a little bit about the queen change, because I'm like, I kind of wish Zerg had like a small lava boost instead of that. Because it is a little bit too pervasive at shutting down pressure. But then other times I'm like, well, at the moment it seems to have balanced things out pretty well. Obviously you're a Zerg player, so like I don't even really want to ask your opinion, because it's always, I just feel like it's always dumb to ask someone's opinion when they're competing. Do you want to share any thoughts on it, or meh?
I mean, I think maybe it wouldn't be as necessary actually on the current map pool, because before on Dust Tower and those maps it was just so horrifying to play against Liberators and stuff like that. But I don't think it changed things massively. Actually, I think it was an okay soft change to have Zerg a little bit in the early game. I don't know if it's 100% necessary, but I mean, obviously, I'm happy about it.
Fair enough, man. Pretty reasoned approach there. I really wish I had a catalog of everything a pro gamer's said about their own race's balance and stuff in interviews and public forums, because you just have like the biggest conglomeration of just like silly comments combined with some really good logical ones, but they're always going to be overshadowed by just the ridiculous comments that we all make when we're a bit angry sometimes. Cute little pair of Zerglings here. So this is Frozen Temple. Obviously, you're playing the map by going spawning pool first, and this is fear of 3-Rax Reaper, right? You want to be prepared.
Yeah, 100%. Like, you never want to just pull first. There's like no advantage to it other than I don't die to stuff like 3-Rax.
Oh no. A little bit of a mistake moving that queen down a little bit early from the main base. That's something you've always got to watch out for this. It's always, I feel like to be safe, you always need to miss a little bit of inject time on your natural. Like, you're like at like 29 energy or something by the time you get down there, if you want to leave the queen in the main base long enough to fend the Reaper off. But, oh, you're actually going to go for a creep tumor anyway, so I guess, okay, cool. Interesting though, little point, I saw a GIF on Reddit. This is my main source of strategy information. That's where I learn about the game is Reddit GIFs. So Scarlet also was going pool first. I think it was in like one of the qualifiers or something, WESG maybe.
Oh, yeah,
Maybe it was Kings of the North. Have you ever tried that? And did you ever think about doing that where you hide the Zergling in the middle? So rather than, sorry, it's really hard to find the spot in the game. It always zooms to the wrong part. So really cute dodge on the SCV because you're trying to hide these Zerglings so you can get around, and it's twofold, right? You want to delay the command center, you want to try and snipe the SCV, but you also want to check if there's extra Reapers coming out and if it's 2 or 3 racks. Yeah. So Scarlet actually hid in the middle of the map. She hid just on the north side of that hedge up there, and the Reaper runs straight past, and then she continues moving. What do you think of that? Have you tried it at all?
I tried it today, actually, and I think it's good to bust out in a tournament, but it's something the more people would do it, the less efficient it would be. Because it literally would take Terran like at 1/10 of a second to just like scoot a tiny bit, and then you see everything. So it's not really something you can reliably do, but it's definitely something that most people won't look for. But if I'd be playing Scarlet the next time in a tournament as a Terran, I would always just send my Reaper that tiny little bit further up to see. And then suddenly you lose your 2 or 4 links, and it kind of sucks.
Yep, fair enough. I was thinking about it kind of in the same light, where it's really funny because there's all these little moves, but I think one of the hardest thing, especially for newer players when they start seeing these cool adjustments pros do, is trying to kind of store a spot in their mind for categorizing that information. They're like, oh, so you do that every time on this map, because that's how you learn the game, right? Is you start like being like, oh, you do this every time in this map, and you kind of get this like path of what you do. But as you get higher and higher level at StarCraft, it becomes more and more about mental flexibility. It's about like busting out these moves when you haven't done it recently or when it's outside of the meta. So there's so many different things which like we take very much for granted after playing this game for many years, and we try not to think about. But every now and then I try to kind of break it down to a simpler level, just so that I'm trying to think of different perspectives. So it's just that idea of you are thinking of the meta, you're thinking about the paths and the common builds which your opponent's doing. And then, you're also thinking about, is this something which is being used too much? Because your opponent's race will start adjusting even to the most minute, ridiculous moves, like hiding 2 Zerglings there. If it happens common enough, every Terran player is just going to check for it, right? But then if it goes out of fashion for a month or 2, you can bring it back, and then you can start using it again.
Yeah, obscurity definitely has a lot of strength in StarCraft. Like the Hellbat push we talked about earlier, that I think is pretty bad. But so many people don't get a Baneling nest anymore because it's been proven that it's not that great. So now it's better again than it's been some months ago when people had it on their mind and made Baneling nests to counter it. So it's always good to cycle in some builds that are technically figured out, but then people forget about it again, basically.
Hells yeah. It's so funny, with those Hellbat builds, man. Like, have you seen Beyond's new 2-on-1 follow-up where he makes the 4 Hellbats? 4 to 6
Yeah.
Hellbats. Like, that's such a cute adjustment. Like, that's one of those things. I think I'm going to do a video on that for Terran players because, like, it's such a small meta thing where it's like, do a 2-1-1, do your standard double eBay, 3rd CC follow-up, but start building Hellions out of your factory as well. And then when he's got combat shields and 4 medevacs of Marines, he's also got 4 to 6 Hellbats with it. And it's like, oh, normally 8 Queens and 60 Zerglings defends this, but now it does absolutely nothing against it. And he just wins games with it. And you're like, oh. And even against Dark, who defended it as perfectly as possible, he was stuck on like equal work accounts with Beyond the whole time, having to throw away so many Banelings and Zerglings into the meat grinder. And I was like, this is just a cool adjustment. So I think that's something which your style is so well set up to deal with, but I think a lot of Zergs, especially in the foreign scene, are really going to struggle when players like maybe Euthermal and Marine Lord start bringing that over into the European scene.
Yeah. Whenever I see Hellbats, I'm pretty happy, but it definitely can catch people off guard a little bit. This game I got my Baners a bit later, but I think I'd still be pretty safe.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so pretty good creep spread going out. Now, with those rocks, I did want to point out, taking down those rocks super early. There's always like annoying rocks on certain maps you want to take down. And these ones especially, I feel like it's interesting because just out of habit, I normally take down the southern rocks, but I saw you taking out the northern rocks. And I realized that's because of the triangle of death, right? Where you've got those 3 points right next to each other where siege tanks can drop.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I think you should always take the close ones to the crevice.
Because otherwise, I mean, that's so hard to clean up, right? It's like 2-1-1 into double tank push or something. Beyond and a few other Terran players are doing a lot on this map. And they could just move the tanks easily between those points, and you just could never get on top of it with only Ling Queen. So that's very smart, making sure you take that down straight away. In terms of your creep spread, I noticed you prioritize the central path and then out towards the left. The north path, I feel like, is very secondary, right? Because that's a wide open area, and they have to push right into your natural to actually start hitting crucial targets. So, I mean, you would say spreading to the north, you still want to do it, but it's probably the least priority, right?
I would actually say the middle path, in a way, is the least priority. Because realistically, you don't want to fight in that low ground anyway. And if they push through the middle, they will just always kill that creep. But the top creep actually unlocks your 5th and your 6th base, which I prefer to put up there rather than in the south. And it's really nice when, let's say, Terran starts pushing your 4th, and they have a really scary army, so you don't really want to fight it because it managed to pre-spread in front of that base. So you start countering through the north, and then you also have your 5th base nice and creeped up, so they can't just kill the 4th and then also kill the other base. Because if they kill the 4th at the bottom, it's really hard for them to push into the 3rd area. So if they want to attack your 5th, which is in the north, they'd have to go all the way around the map. And then having a lot of creep there would obviously be pretty nice. But I mean, I wouldn't read too much into this game. Like, sometimes you just happen to spread creep in a certain pattern, but you didn't really think about it. And yeah, but I would say south side, this position, most important, north, second most, middle, kind of doesn't matter that much because you're not going to get that far realistically anyway.
Fair enough. That does make sense. Interestingly, your creep spread is lesser than the previous games. You only went 4 queens this game. You didn't commit as much, but now you're adding 4 more queens to your army a bit later on. So do you feel like this is one of those things where just kind of in the game, you just kind of made a by feel adjustment? You were like, oh, I think I can just skip this queen, get a few more drones out, just have a few active tumors, which I'll use as efficiently as possible, rather than any dedicated creep queens early?
It has a little bit to do also with the build order, because I went pool first, and I'm a lot less comfortable with that build, so I probably didn't execute it as correctly as my go-to build.
Yeah.
And the addition of queens right now, if I looked at the lava, I think that was because I simply had overmen. So I was like, well, I mean, queens are always good, so I'm just going to make queens, you know. It's always good to adjust when you make mistakes. Mistakes happen all the time, so there's no shame in like making queens rather than not spending that money, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that's cool. And I like the adjustment as well. Like, you know, it is kind of cutting a corner early, you know, saying I'll have slightly less queens, but you had more drones and Ling Bane to work with. And the build orders do just end up a bit different when you do an opening that you're not as comfortable with. So that makes perfect sense. This time you've got those map hack Zerglings out, which I absolutely love. I love these map hack Zerglings, man. They just make me so happy. Like, it just gives you so much forward warning of where his army's moving. Like with this one, we see you're already positioning this huge counterattack on the left before he even gets onto creep, and you're just forcing him to pull back. And that's just really cute, right? I just love the effect of these Burrowed Zerglings. They cost you almost nothing. Of course, the Burrowed Zergling on the 4th as well. And I really like that rule you said earlier as well for when do you get Burrow? And you're like, oh, it's a non-essential upgrade, but it can give you a lot of value. So you never cut something important like Baneling speed or 2-2. But whenever you've got the money spare and you can squeeze that in there, there's no reason not to throw it in. So you're not doing it in the first 3 or 4 minutes of the game. It's always going to be like 5 minutes onwards once you've got a bigger economy to absorb it. But yeah, I like that you just kind of squeeze it in there and then you get so much utility out of it every game.
Yeah, it's just so cheap once your economy is established that you should just never not use it, I think. Like, I still don't use it every game, and I think that's stupid. You should always have it once the 8-minute mark hits. There's no excuse not to have it unless it's a really strange game where you really are hanging on from the start to like that point and need to keep making units, otherwise you die. But in a normal game, it's just always good value.
Awesome. Well, we are getting towards the latter stage of this game, so anyone in chat, if you've got any questions, do shout them out. I know there's already a few in there. We're going to answer a few questions soon enough. I know it's getting pretty late. Wow. Nice. This game is just beautiful. I don't even like want to talk about too many of the details of the Burrowed Banelings. Like, you're just burrowing Banelings. We will talk about it in a moment, of course. But guys, please do shout out your questions. Me and Dario will try and answer these. But I'll try not to keep him too late, as it is midnight your time right now. So,
yeah, that's fine.
But yeah, so really well played here. You've been burrowing Banelings constantly, and I feel like this is also, just generally speaking about it, before we talk about the specifics of how to burrow those Banelings and so on, I feel like it's a meta development, right? Like, Dark has been doing it, and a few other Koreans, and it's something to do with when you're skipping the Spire, you kind of need to do something to put pressure back on the Terran, right? So obviously Ling Bane counterattacks are like a big thing, but you kind of need something else. Oh! Sorry, this is just too beautiful, man. I bet you've got to,
yeah.
That's got to feel good watching a game like this, right? You pull this off in like the last game of a finals.
It was nice. I enjoyed it a lot. My favorite move in this game, I don't want to self-praise too much, but a little bit earlier there, I had the 3 Banelings, and I was like unsure how to push his army into it, and then I just sent my queens off creep. And I was like, he's definitely gonna try to kill those, and then he just ran into the 3 Banelings. It's kind of funny because in StarCraft you can actually fake a lot of mistakes as Zerg and set up traps that way. A lot of times in ZvP I send out 1 queen a little bit far away from safety against Phoenix, and then there's just 5 Burrowed Infestors behind it because I know they can't, you know,
they can't resist.
Contain themselves.
Yeah.
No, they can't.
That's actually really good though, yeah, because like you've got to make it look like a mistake. I think one of the issues, I'm trying to find that moment with the 3 Banelings. I think it's just after this, right? Like it's maybe
after the big fight.
Okay. It's one of those things where like you see people trying to bait things in, but they're really actively microing it. They're like moving the unit back and forth, and the opponent can see your unit's kind of jittering from side to side the whole time, right? And it's like, it's obvious you're microing this.
Yeah.
So, well, obviously, like, I'm not going to go take the bait. But if you just kind of click the queens off creep, like, and they're just standing around or like trying to spread some tumors that have been queued up, it looks like you're not watching it. And this is something, especially at higher levels, players start to make those judgment calls of, oh, he's not watching here. Bam, go for it. So I love that little bit of like, you can make it look like you've made that mistake just by not actively microing it, just pretending you've left the unit alone, and then bam, you pounce with your trap. And that's sick.
It's a lot about, making it look like a mistake for sure. Because he would never believe you. The queens are like actively making course corrections. It's very unbelievable. And here's now the 3 Banelings. And
you're like, come into them, damn it.
Yeah. And then I was like, oh, he's not coming. And I was like, how do I get him? Because it's like his army is too far down. He would realistically never move forward. And I was like, oh, okay, well, it's just...
Queens off creep! Go, boys, go! Oh my god.
I was so happy when that worked out.
That's so sick. That's beautiful. Alright, so, in terms of burrowing the Banelings, I don't have the correct overlay on to show how I would do it in a game. but we can kind of see it. Now, I'm pretty sure you normally use the method where you've just got your control group of Lings and Banes on the same hotkey. You just click on a point on the ground, and then you go Shift Burrow, so Shift R, and then you Shift left click 2 Banelings out of your selection, and then you regroup your hotkey and move it back, right?
Wait, what? I think.
Or do you or do you manually box the Banelings and just tell them to go burrow?
Oh, I box them for sure.
Oh, you're a boxer. Okay, so you don't use the method, which I know Snoot uses it the same way I do, the one I'm talking about. So there's 2 different ways of doing it. You're a big mouse accuracy guy, who's like very, quick with your movement. So you're a guy who likes to manually do things a lot more. Someone who likes things to be more automated and easier, like Snoot and myself, we like to do it a different way. So for you, you're going to box these 2 Banelings, Shift R, easy. For us, we would always select the whole group. Whoops. Click, Shift Burrow, deselect 2 Banelings, Control 1, move back the whole army, which sounds complicated, but once you've practiced it, is really good. Basically, it's just deselecting micro. It's or cloning. It's where you give the orders to everyone to make it easy. You remove the units which you want to keep the order, and then you bring them back. I can't even explain it right now without being in a unit tester for anyone who doesn't understand it. I think I talk about that stuff pretty decently in the Fundamental Mechanics Daily, which is episode number 10. So if you guys are curious about that, go find the section on deselecting in daily number 10. But anyway, we're getting towards the end of this. I'm going to start taking questions while we keep watching this. So first question, there was one from someone said, okay, so Super Duper Nil says, what should a Terran do versus their style? What would prompt the most problems for TLO here?
I've been thinking about that, and I feel like Terran could make a few more forward turrets, actually. Like, let's say you're setting up in the front of the base of me. Well, let's look at the planetary here now. Like, you could have, like, 1 turret, like, let's say 10 units below it, and then another 10 below it. It would help a little bit as fallback point, and give you a little bit more vision where you don't need to scan yet. You're never going to be able to make turrets in front of the Zerg base and not lose them in an engagement. But the less space you have to cover with your army that you need to keep scanning helps, I guess. And I don't know if Terran could make a Raven. It's probably very hard. Maybe the easiest way would be if somebody uses a lot of Burrow Baneling is just to make 1 extra CC. That's probably actually the cheapest way to do it without any risk and has a lot of utility anyway.
That makes perfect sense, right? Because to get a Raven, I mean, you're either just destroying your medevac and liberator production, or you're gonna okay, yeah, you're gonna either destroy that production, or you're building a second starport really early, getting a tech lab on it. Either way, it's a massive gas cost, which is something which you've got to kind of adjust your build. But 550 minerals is something, that's 2 mules worth. If you get that down a bit earlier, that's actually a really, I think, intelligent way of responding to it. Maybe do just get an extra orbital. Definitely, I think you could go a Raven. Is it the most efficient? Maybe not necessarily, but I think you could get away with it most of the time. I think it would be decent.
But it's always very dangerous because Ravens are actually very easy to lose as well, and then if you lose it, it's really sucks as Terran. So I think the orbital is probably a good option, and in general, just being very efficient with your scans. Make sure that you don't just scan single tumors, but that you get a good value out of those, and try also to split your army a little bit before you're moving out, so you don't move in a giant ball. So even if you get hit, it's not as brutal. And then also think about what are the obvious paths. Like, for example, if you look at the army down here right now.
Yep.
I didn't use the Banelings, but if you would walk like close to the ramp up towards the base there, unlikely there's Banelings at the bottom of the ramp. So that would be a good path where most likely Zergs wouldn't burrow Banelings. So it's a little bit about just taking non-obvious paths, I guess.
Yeah, right. So you could go around to like the left, for instance, come in from there because the Banelings are going to be like up here. Okay, yeah, cool. So yeah, you can just kind of adjust your army, pre-spread, Definitely saving scans before you move out can be good as well. But it's also one of these things as well, which is very momentum-based, right? The Zerg isn't going to get a chance to burrow Banelings in all over the map in the most obnoxious positions unless they were already ahead. So it is one of these things which seems harder to deal with if you're already behind. So it's one of those things where I think players are like, oh man, it's so impossible to deal with this. But it's like, well, yeah, the problem is the Zerg had full map control for 10 minutes straight, and he had no pressure on him, so he had all the time in his world to burrow Banelings in every possible location, you know?
Yeah.
That's usually not the situation. Usually it is only like 6 or 8 Banelings burrowed in key positions, and once you're aware of that happening, it only takes 2 or 3 scans to kind of push across the map. And whilst it is an annoying expenditure, they're investing Banelings in it and burrow as well, so it actually works out kind of okay. Sick fungal parasitics there, by the way. Get most of the liberators. Very nice. Okay, cool. So I'm going to put this on your camera for the next minute, and let's ask some more questions. Let's go back to the very early questions, and there was one from Dayway. He says, question for both of you. I'm playing at a high Master Zerg level on the ladder. Most Terrans seem to skip the bunker even when using this double medevac drop build. I found out that the first 2 lava injects seem to perfectly match with the Terran not having too many units to stop 22 Zerglings moving into their natural. Sorry, let me turn the game sound down. These battles are getting out of control. So 22 Lings hitting their natural. Most of the time, I instantly win and I delay their drop because of killing the Marines without the medevacs. Is that even happening in GM? Does a Ling Flood ever work? Have you tried it? I'm just really curious.
And the answer is not really. First of all, most of the time people just have the wall up very quickly, and they don't just keep the Marines down in the natural. Most of the time people just put them on the ramp, and as soon as a Ling Flood would come, they would just box their SCVs, send them up in the main, and there's a good Marine count very quickly, right? So even if you delay mining a little bit, the timing of the 1-1 of the double medevac drop is very brutal on high level. If Zerg is under-droned for any reason before that hits, you just either die or you're gonna be stuck on a low drone count for a very long time.
Yeah.
What happens on GM level which is like the next level to it basically, is that people time out the double medevac going out and then they Baneling bust you. That can be very strong, like especially if the map is not as small as Frozen. The medevacs are like halfway across the map, just run out of their first boost, and then you Baneling bust them, and then you can still have enough units at home to defend as well, and still have an okay drone count. It's just usually you want to delay attacks like that as Zerg until you have a sustainable drone count that can actually transition into later stages.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times it happens against Terran. You kill a lot of SCVs, but their production is still in full gear. Like even if you take out their entire SCV line, maybe they can't grow anymore. Maybe they can't get a third CC quickly and make their infrastructure explode even more, but they can still sustain their current production. And then you have a problem because you need to make drones and they're still producing and you just traded your units against the economy, and then things get very tricky.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak from my own experience as well, playing at like mid-masters as a Terran. I die to these Ling pressures. I used to a lot more, and the reason is always just because my Marines are just chilling like too far down in my natural, or they're not positioned properly on the ramp so the Lings can fully wrap around them. If I simply have the Marines in a solid wall, even on the ramp, standing there, they can just gun the Zerglings down, because only like 3 or 4 Zerglings can fight at a time. And I've got 8 to 10 Marines, and like you just gun them down. So, that being said, does it work at pro level and GM level? It still can. Pet somehow qualified for Kesper Cup, and that's literally all he did, was try to run Zerglings at players in the first 3 minutes of the game. I've got to rewatch those games. I didn't get to see everything, but like that's what it looked like. All he tried against TY was like Zergling floods into Roach Ling all-ins, and TY was just too good. He showed he's like, I'm better than the guys you've been practicing with. Maybe they let this work. It doesn't work against me. So yeah. But really great answer as always, TLO. Thank you very much. Another question, not really to do with this show as much, but just to do with TVZ in general. DeCoolin says, what do you think about ghosts in TVZ? Do you like it? Is there any reasonable spot for the ghost to be used? If not, how could the ghost's role be improved in your opinion?
I think ghosts are necessary for super late game CVT, and they can be very strong in that. So as long as Zerg only has Ling, Bane, Ravager, and Fester Ultralisk, you can still do fine with a heavy bio composition with lots of Marauders and Liberators. You can still fight the Zerg army, but as soon as there's also Corruptors, you need to add Ghosts, I think, because if not, the Corruptors just pick up the Liberators. But the Ghosts are more to counter the Corruptors than to counter the Ultralisks, actually, because the Ultralisks still get countered by the Liberators. And for that, Ghosts are very good, because Snipes are pretty good against Corruptors.
They just kind of snap them out of the sky, don't they? They do a really good job.
Yeah, especially because Corruptors, they need quite some time to kill the Liberators. They just tank a lot against normal Marines, and the Marines need to run away from your units, because else they just get Banelinged or eaten up by an Ultra. But the Ghosts can deal that damage so quickly at the start of the fight that if they take out half the Corruptors, the Liberators stay alive longer, and then they dish out a lot of damage. And obviously they can also help against Ultras. It's not like you need to exclusively snipe Corruptors. So they're more of a very late game situation where you don't really want to be as Terran, but there's still situations where you can win against a late game Zerg anyway, especially if you had an advantage before.
Fantastic. All right, well, we got a question from a fan. He says, I haven't been following StarCraft as much recently, but I love you, TLO. Big fan. Are there any tournaments that I can see you compete in the near future?
Oh, first of all, thanks, man. Always good to hear. And well, I'm gonna play in as many online cups as I can, so I'll just play in all the Go for SCT2s, Corsair Cups, whatever online stuff comes on. And then there's not so much coming up for me in the next months. I'll probably be at Home Story Cup, which I guess will be November or December. And other than that, yeah, just online stuff. I'll tweet about it and keep people updated about that.
Fantastic. A question here, which I think I can answer from Tartarus MK2. He says, Pig, I'm in Bronze Silver. Does autocast unburrow on Baneling still work adequately? I think it's actually autocast detonate, if I remember correctly. I don't think there's an autocast for unburrow, and it will just detonate on the first unit that comes along. Is that correct, Dario? If there's anyone that knows, it's got to be you.
I've seen them. I think they unburrow maybe because if a unit gets close to it, they just want to attack it or something like that. I haven't used that option in so long that I don't even know. But
I think either way, though, it should be good for a Bronze Silver player, whether it's unburrow or autocast, because players move their army around in big clumps at that level. Like, it'll be okay. You'll never get the same value of money hits, but it should still work out pretty decently. To be honest, it's definitely something you can enjoy having fun with. I wouldn't focus on working really hard at practicing your Burrowed Banelings necessarily at that level if you're looking to improve, but it's something you can have so much fun with. So yeah, I reckon give it a go, but I think both of us have no experience with using that since the very, very early days, so it's kind of lost in the memory, the sands of time.
I definitely recommend trying stuff like that out, though, because sometimes it frustrates me when people tell, oh, you're Bronze Silver, you should only work on your mechanics and your build orders, and don't even start trying to do micro and stuff like this, because you're so bad anyway, like, you're going to get more value out of, macroing. I think it's great for lower league players to also try cool stuff, because that's the stuff that is most fun in StarCraft, if you manage to pull off a big Baneling hits. Even maybe you're losing the game because you screwed up your macro, but you still have that awesome moment. So I definitely encourage doing stuff like this and finding your own way to do it. You don't necessarily need to emulate the pro gamers, you know. If you find cool ways to do big plays in your league, go for it, because that's a lot of fun. And I definitely, think it's a good thing.
Exactly. Like, if you're someone who's like, I think there's like this new breed of people, because esports is so big right now, there's this new breed of gamers which is getting bigger and bigger, which used to be a very hardcore niche of people who pick up a competitive game, an esport title, and they want to get good at it. And that's it. Like, they just want to really improve. And for those guys, it's like, yeah, okay, focus on your mechanics at first. You know, you can add in the fancy stuff later. But I still think, even though that's getting bigger, and they're definitely the people who are most active on the forums and stuff, I mean, that's the sort of people which I come from as well, right? 90% of gamers are still not necessarily playing just to try and improve and become the absolute best player in the next week. It's about fun. It's about those epic moments. I remember you wrote, I think it was a blog about this whole concept like a year ago or something, of just play the game your own way and have fun. And I remember that was one of the favorite things that I'd read in a long time. And it just like reminded me how elitist the communities can get sometimes in the esports community, because we're all just so focused on improving and like just focus on your macro and just copy that Korean build order. And sometimes, especially in a strategy game, we forget that it's about understanding the concepts in your own way. And one of the big beauties of StarCraft is it's such a unique game and there's so much variety. Like there is always something you can do differently. And it's why like balance just doesn't matter. Like when people get really hung up on balance or this or that, like I get it. Sometimes you're frustrated, but when people then use that as like it's something to complain about all the time, it's like, dude, at top GM level, it doesn't matter. At my level, balance does not matter at all. Like it is so irrelevant. You know, if I was training all day and I was a pro gamer, I can understand it a bit more. But if you're not a pro gamer, I mean, shit, man, the game is so much fun and there's always so many options in every single scenario to make things work. So I love your attitude towards it, TLO. It's always keeping it fresh and entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, it's just people should just focus on having fun, you know? I mean, being competitive and everything is cool too, especially if you have fun being competitive, you know, that's also nice, you know, but there's, people should just have fun.
Have fun, whatever floats your boat, exactly. So, Super Duper Nils says, since you and TL are already doing stuff and most tournaments are over right now, is there any chance for some new TL attack videos or something like that? TL attack, how did that work? Was it like the player played show matches against people while being interviewed, right? Or like while like they're kind of like talking through what they're doing and people asking them questions at the same time? It's so long ago, I can't even remember exactly what the format was.
Well, it was like a mix, different stuff, like lots of trolling involved, like having Hotbit on and then
right.
Usually there would be one mystery player that would just be another pro gamer, so you are never sure if you're actually playing against somebody good or if you're playing against somebody you're supposed to be trolling. They're like Hotbit tells you, okay, you can only make Ravens from now on or something. You know, it's just a silly format like that.
That's cool. I do like that idea actually. So that's something I'll think about seeing if I can set something up like that. That'd be a lot of fun. Awesome. I think that's all the questions. And I mean, I like that we've had time to rewatch this game while we're answering the questions because there's so many awesome Burrowed Baneling hits. It's just like, it's beautiful. It's great to watch. And even the addition of the Ravagers late game is really cool here. I guess just adding those in to deal with those Liberators, blast them out of the skies. Interesting. Why not just get Corruptors? Is that because the Corruptors go down easier to the Ghosts? You feel like the Ravagers are a little bit better because they come in behind and burst down the Liberators quicker?
They're also just more, first of all, they're much more accessible. Because Corruptors are really expensive and the Spire attack as well. And I think Corruptors are more for a much more high economy game than this.
Yeah.
I just, didn't really have any point in the game where I just could easily make 10 Corruptors. And I think it's always good to have Ravagers in your army anyway. Even against a purely ground-based army, Fungal plus Corrosive Bile is always extremely strong. They always deal damage while your Ultralisks are being kited because they're also relatively fast and they can catch up to the army and deal damage here and there. They're also really good to kill planetaries because you can do the semicircle around the planetary on the economy line. So you damage the planetary but also kill the repairing SCVs. Ravagers are just a great unit in any stage of the game against Terran. Yeah. Once you established a strong economy.
As long as you got the micro for them, like just keeping in mind this is definitely a TLO composition here. Infestors, Vipers, Ravagers, Lingbane, and Ultra. If you're not too good at using multiple hotkeys and so on, I'd take one of the spellcasters out or take one of the units out here or there. Corruptors are a much easier unit to use. The Ravagers though, if you've got the micro for them, so beautiful. We see here they just blast the Liberators out of the sky. That's awesome. So fantastic, man. GG's, well played. Congrats on that very nice, convincing 3-0 tournament win. A very cool style. Thanks for coming on. Before I let you go, any shout outs or anything like that you'd like to do?
Well, it's just, I'm just really happy you're doing this show. So you're going to get a big shout out for me because I think that's a niche we were missing for a while. And I hope more and more people are going to watch and you can go watch me tomorrow stream again as well on my Twitch at twitch.tv/liquidtilo. And big shout out also to all my teammates, because I've improved a lot again, and that's largely due to the bootcamp we had in Utrecht. So big shout out to just in general Team Liquid for providing us with that and taking good care of us.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm just spamming your Twitter and Twitch in the Twitch chat there. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, especially with the slightly weirder format today, where we were going to do the other one, but I think this worked out really well. We just got to get all your thoughts on awesomeness. So thanks for coming on, man, and I'll catch you next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, and I'm happy to do this again if you want.
Hells yeah, we'll have a weekly show. It's just Dr. Dario's Corner.
Okay, we can do that. Well, have a good one.
Good night, man. See ya.
Bye-bye.
All right, thanks so much to TLO for coming on. With these sort of What If Wednesdays episodes, I know this isn't the same as a normal What If Wednesday, but I'm going to kind of put it under the same banner because we got a pro gamer in here, and we got a shitload of I got a shitload of their insight in. I hope you guys did as well. I love hearing all that thoughts about how he plays the game and how he understands it in all these different situations. So I hope you guys like this format. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while. I've been wanting to get players like Uthermal and Neeb to like go through tournament winning games. Unfortunately, I haven't quite been able to convince those guys like, yeah, but I'm going to keep harassing people until I get awesome people like Dario who are willing to come in and share all their strategies and ideas like that. So it really is special for a pro gamer to come and share that insight, because it does give away something, which that potentially it gives away their understanding of the matchup for their opponents to understand and use. So it is a big sacrifice, something Dario is doing for the community and for you guys and for me as well. So please do hop on his stream, sub to him, send him some tips and everything. Thank you everyone who's for watching the daily. I better finish it up now as we've already been going for such a long time, an hour and 20 minutes. But thank you very much for enjoying the daily. I will add a lot of detailed timestamps and all that stuff to the YouTube video. Don't forget, guys, to hug a watermelon, kick a walrus, and of course, punch a watermelon to the moon. I'll catch you guys next time. Goodbye and good night.